he and Dylan were friends, and they collaborated, I guess, and traded some stuff, which is cool. Some stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, the 60s, it was like, he was tight with the band, and they would play on each other's stuff all the time.
I mean,
and,
all these guys must have toured
the Byrds.
together.
Yeah. Roger McGuinn, for sure. Yeah. I saw, it had to be last, speaking of things during the week, I went on Tuesday last week because it's $5 Tuesdays at AMC, and I went and saw Blinded by the Light.
Oh, cool.
And it was actually like a really good experience.
It looks cute.
It is. It's it helps if you like Bruce Springsteen.
All right.
And I do. So, yeah, it ended up like affecting me more than I thought it would.
Emotionally?
Because I remember being kind of like the kid in the movie.
A little bit of an outsider.
Yeah, kind of,
find something to relate to.
Exactly. So I was thinking, when I got home, I was thinking, okay, so I had started listening to Springsteen when I was like at the most 11 years old. And this was like just after we'd moved to Phoenix. And it was after I had seen my dad for the last time. And like all these things, and already feeling kind of like an outsider kind of thing, not fitting in and all of that, and that's right at the period where that's where I found his stuff and kind of glommed onto it.
Wow,
it spoke to me. Yeah,
around the same age as the protagonist.
A little younger, I think.
Okay,
because he is finishing up, I guess, what would be high school.
Okay.
If it weren't in England.
Yeah. How's the acting? Because these are people I've never heard of before in the cast.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
They did a good job. It's kind of like a musical. It is just filled end to end with Springsteen music.
Oh, God. So there's two things you just listed that are going to make me not.
One of the things that I thought about is that I've never been in a relationship with someone who liked Springsteen.
Does Deanna?
No.
Does she like musicals?
So I think I'm always of the idea, and I always try a little bit to introduce somebody to an artist through especially him by saying, okay, you just haven't heard the right songs yet. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't, and most of the times it doesn't.
You know
I
what
don't
your
know.
problem is?
Huh.
You haven't dated enough 55-year-old women.
There you go. That's the problem. That's
who still lay out by the pool and smoke Virginia Slims. Sorry, I'm being cruel right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that might just be your type. I'm just saying.
I do feel like I should have been born like 20 years before I was.
Yeah.
I would have.
Yeah, you would have looked pretty cool in your Converse at those Ramones shows. I don't know.
Who knows? But yeah, it was a good film. I recommend it. People like Springsteen. But it's directed by the person who did like Bend It Like Beckham and what else? I don't know. But so it's got and the idea behind it being that it's in late 80s London suburbs where they had like a huge unemployment issue. It was the height of Thatcherism. It was also the height of like the National Front. And so, anti-immigrant rhetoric and all that sort of thing too, not unlike a lot of things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
So politically, it's very relevant, I think, too.
That's good and interesting.
Yep.
Now you got me thinking about election stuff.
Well, I mean, hopefully everybody voted no on 105 and 106 today.
Have you... Oh, yeah, that was today. Have you seen any photos of the British Prime Minister?
Boris Johnson?
He looks like
a joke.
He looks like Donald Trump. What the fuck is up with his hair?
He is. So that was actually the subject of, more than one John Oliver's, is that...
he looks like a clone if the clone got botched. And it's...
Yeah, well, the thing is that he tries to use the kind of clownish appearance to disarm people.
Okay.
So that he can
manipulate them?
Yeah, exactly. So
He's
people will be looking at him as a joke while he's doing bad things to the country.
It's just so weird. It's like holding a mirror up to ourselves.
It is.
I'm like, how can you? I was listening to him speak. I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah.
How can anyone take this seriously? And then I was like, wait a second. That's. Okay.
I mean, people. It's a direct result of people being afraid of change and a different way of life, and
that frustrates me.
It's yeah, it is. It's immensely. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll turn things around. I know we've talked about this before briefly. I don't think. We're not going to fix anything necessarily by putting a Democrat in the White House. Yeah. I mean, it will be not Trump. That will be the thing. But if we vote in somebody like Biden or another like centrist, it's going to be, status quo. Nothing's going to change. At this point, if you look at an aging population, and lower birth rates and all that sort of thing, we need some drastically different social programs. Mm-hmm. We need things like socialized medicine. We need, I think that we really need the idea of a universal income, that sort of thing. It's just...
It's furthermore more frustrating that it just seems like the same old getting recycled again and again. And the same old messaging. I mean, even with this election, this special election locally, a lot of the rhetoric around light rail. Well, first of all, a lot of the stuff that I saw that was telling people to vote yes 105 and yes 106, it was so misleading. It didn't even mention...
Well, it's incredibly misleading.
Light rail at all. Yeah. It was like...
It's all talking about fix the roads and... Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And if you start...
Koch brothers.
Yeah. Well, one down. But...
my brain is throbbing. Sorry.
Yeah. No, of course...
Oh, yeah. One
talking
down,
about it
right,
now... Yep. Is pointless because by the time this goes up... Well, first of all, we're not a political powerhouse, and it will also...
What? You don't think us and our thousands of listeners can...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, if it turns out we didn't succeed in voting that down, I mean, I think that 105 was probably the more important one, but 106 is talking about, annual like mandatory reevaluation of the pension plans and that sort of thing. Saying that if they're not 90% funded, then they're
going to go away.
Yeah.
What? That's insane.
Yeah, both of those things are, because the light rail means more expansion of light rail only means, more access to transportation for people who can't afford a car.
Need access.
Yeah.
And we've got a huge deficit in that area that really needs to be addressed.
We do, and the thing is that also it only makes sense in the long run from a climate standpoint. To cut reliance on car. If I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah.
We
always accidentally get political. Oops.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do?
What else is out there that you've seen or heard or read recently?
I'm still reading that REM early years thing. I'm reading that simultaneously with reading this Dean Wareham book, Black Postcards. He's the he was in Galaxy 500, which is the series I'm doing on Album Infinitum right now with Ashley Neff Toole.
Yeah.
And then he was also in Luna, if you ever heard them. And
yeah. Weren't you mentioning them, a few weeks ago? I forgot how good they were.
Yeah, they're very good. His stuff, he and Britta Phillips, under Dean and Britta, do some pretty cool stuff too.
I am going to pick up the REM book. I really am. I told myself that when you first mentioned it. I had a long summer reading list because I went to this Gender Matters workshop at Harvard. So all of these books are like, I read this book called Testosterone Rex by the same biologist and author who did Delusions of Gender, and it was very good. And I'm reading another collection of essays that's called Gender Outlaws, and it was compiled almost 10 years ago, but it's really cool to me how relevant a lot of the voices are that are coming through in these essays, especially as an educator, because I meet more and more young people who are non-binary identified. So hearing their stories has been really awesome. And then this other book called Bad Feminist that I just mentioned. Oh, and then I read this other book called Men Explain Things to Me, which was also a collection of essays. And it's by Rebecca Solnit, who's the woman that wrote Wanderlust and A Field Guide to Getting Lost. So those were both, I think they were both bestsellers, but she's also written some pretty important historical books. Like she has a book that was out about Edward Muybridge and photographic processes, right? And the very opening essay is about how she went to this dinner party and she's getting introduced around, and she gets introduced to this gentleman. And her friend starts to say, this is Rebecca Solnit, and she wrote the book that just came out on Muybridge. And the guy is like, oh, that's interesting. There's this really important book on Muybridge, and he proceeds to spell it all out. And the two other women, they're standing there listening to him, and her friend goes, yeah, that's her. She wrote that book. And he proceeds to keep talking about this amazing book and how significant, and her friend is like, yeah. And it takes them like half an hour until somebody actually like pulls the book off the coffee table or something and shows him the cover, and then for him to realize like, oh, that's her.
Wow.
And that's the book. And yeah, so
that's ridiculous.
That's the essay that sets the tone. And then, however, a lot of the essays in the book get very deep into the status of women and girls in the world. And there were points when I was reading these essays that I just broke down, because and now I'm talking politics again, aren't I? Really just like shakes me to my core sometimes to think about the fact that for women, we have come so far, but then I look ahead, it's like we still have so far to go. And I was thinking about this, and I hope I didn't internalize it too much, but my mom, and actually some of my colleagues were sitting around talking about how great college is, and how college was, this great place of exploration, and it opened all these doors for a lot of women to become professionals. And that old like theme song from Mattel Barbie commercials from when we were kids was going through my head, and it was like, we girls can do anything. Right, Barbie? But it's not true, because my mom and her generation would be like, we're limited. What can we go out in the workforce and do? And here's what was mainly open to them: nurse, secretary, teacher, or housewife, right? But I mean, if you're going out into the working world, when I look around at myself, my generation, and my peers, it's astounding to me how many women I know who are nurses, teachers, or like some kind of executive assistant, whatever title, or they're staying at home. And it's frustrating to me, because this isn't the position I want. I'm really ambitious. And you know this. This is why I'm working on like my 4th degree.
Right.
I'm getting a freaking doctorate because I don't want to stay a teacher. But I also feel in a lot of ways limited, or like I became a teacher even though I never intended to, because that's a safe place for women. Like education big time is a safe spot. So that all of that was on my mind when I read Rebecca Solnit's collection of essays. I was like,
So it was a
milestone.
relaxing read.
No, yeah. If you